This chapter explores the increased mainstreaming of rock music in the 70s. As the decade progressed, FM radio played less extended tracks and highlighted the top 40, much like pop-centered AM radio had done in previous decades. Corporate rock sought the mega million-dollar album acts, often sacrificing creativity over profits. Established acts were experiencing record sales during this time, while newer bands conformed to radio-friendly styles in order to survive in a highly competitive music market. Some of the bands with hugely successful records during this time were the Eagles' Hotel California, Peter Frampton's Frampton Comes Alive, and Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. All of these bands had existed in one way or another for at least 10 years. As corporate heads strove for more profits, less risks were taken. This resulted in a similarity and conservative sameness to the music being created. Many bands felt the pressure from executives to churn out the hits. Progressive rock continued to push the boundaries with bands like Rush from Canada, Electric Light Orchestra, and even the British band Queen, who blended glam with prog rock, expanding the experimentation and creativity inherent in progressive rock. Singer-songwriters often now fronted bands. In addition to their musical reasons, some singer-songwriters began fronting bands as a way to increase their venue size and even play arenas, which was another expanding element of the music business in the late 70s. Bob Dylan had his group Rolling Thunder Revue. Billy Joel performed with a band, and Bruce Springsteen almost single-handedly reinvigorated arena concerts again with his energetic live shows featuring the E Street Band. Amidst the frenzy to get rich in rock and roll in the mid to late 70s, an underground scene was developing which had its roots in many offbeat places. Clusters of musicians and fans, tired of corporate rock, hippies, disco, and anything mainstream, began to experiment in small dive bars and clubs in New York City. What would eventually be called punk rock began with writers, performance artists, and experimenters who were all seeking something new and unconventional. Some of the inspiration for this new scene came from earlier bands like the Velvet Underground, Andy Warhol's house band at his hangout The Factory, as well as Iggy Pop and the Stooges and MC5, both from Detroit, Michigan, and both known for outrageous and aggressive performances. A small and dirty club in the Skid Row section of New York City called CBGB would become the nucleus for this new scene. Acts were encouraged to experiment, so their styles became very individual and distinctive. Poet Patti Smith performed at CBGB, along with the New York Dolls, Richard Hell, Blondie, and the Ramones. Very few big labels wanted to touch this unpredictable new scene, so an aesthetic of do-it-yourself emerged. Bands recorded their own music, fans made their own posters, created their own fanzines, found their own distribution channels, and created their own scene. Some of the punk music that began in New York City flew over and influenced youths in England. When the New York Dolls appeared on a British pop music television show, it inspired a few guys who would become members of the Sex Pistols. But musically, it was the music of the Ramones that many young punk rockers in England would learn to play along to. According to Joe Strummer, former lead singer for The Clash, both Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols and Paul Simonon of The Clash learned to play along to Ramones records. It is in the UK where the visual image and fashion most often associated with punk rock developed and went global. It is also where a more desperate, anarchistic tone arose in the music. English youths had far more reasons to be frustrated than did most American youths. Unemployment was very high, and many young people were on the government dole, the welfare system. Upward movement within the English class system was very difficult at best, and many youth protested having a monarchy in place that used tax dollars while unemployment was so high. There was an overwhelming theme of no future in British punk rock, led by bands like the Sex Pistols, The Clash, The Jam, and the Buzzcocks. After the Sex Pistols' initial U.S. tour, the band would break up. But their influence would transcend to many other new punk rock bands, and new punk scenes would thrive regionally in many U.S. cities, like Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Orange County, California. Record labels wanting to grab onto some of the punk rock market began to sign some experimental bands and created a new name for a category of music with a wide range of styles. They called it New Wave music. As Legs McNeil, creator of the magazine titled Punk, stated, record executives took punk, put a tie on it, then called it New Wave. Artists as diverse as the Cars, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Devo, and Elvis Costello were given this title. Some bands, like Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders, had no problem with the new label and even embraced it. Others rejected it completely since it represented another attempt at mainstream control that many of these acts wanted nothing to do with. Many new wave bands feature experimentation with new synthesizers that were becoming more readily available. And by 1981, some of these same bands would thrive in a new 24-hour television channel devoted specifically to music videos.